All right. So, Jason, I'm jazzed. We're going to be talking about something that is a really growing, blowing up trend, maybe a resurging trend. Field marketing events, more and more dinners, and in-person get-togethers. And want to kind of walk through the value prop. Why do you think they're becoming such a big thing? It's not like it's a little bit of a big thing. Like it's becoming a big thing again. So what's your take, the state of the state in your mind?
Well, so 2026, right? It's so hard to think. And I'm 3 years ago, this wasn't really possible because of things we were dealing with in society with disease and other things. But the real resurgence is I think people crave contact. I think people want to talk to people in person. They feel the conversation goes deeper and longer and more fulfilling. I believe that sellers are out there engaging in a one-to-many aspect and see the most return on value of their time is to speak to many people at one time in a group event, either a fireside chat kind of situation, roundtables, or, really the dinner. Whenever I was a seller and we were trying to get things launched at Risk IQ and trying to get in front of as many people, there's a big difference in impact between sitting on a stage and having a conversation and talking about industry and talking about, best practice and maybe even talking about your business, as opposed to 10 people around the table talking about things in their lives. And then whenever you get to it, you talk about business because you build a personal rapport. And I think it's the individual relationship that we're having a renaissance of where that, we as business people have tried to maximize the return on this remote work. And I think that we have done a great job at it. But I also believe that we now crave human connection more than ever. And I do believe that that is how we seek out information. And with so much information just being automated and generated, how do we hear what people really think? And that's to go and meet them in person.
Yeah, and it's I'm very much on the AI train, right?
For sure.
But I think that it is causing us now, and I think it'll become more and more important, where we're going to have that human connection for at least some of these interactions. And I think that's going to be some of the more profound ways that businesses are going to be changed, right? In the 80s, I remember, watching the movies of old Wall Street guys, right? And like their fingers would be crooked from all the dialing from the, the cold calling, which is kind of a crazy thing. You're like, how many numbers a day are you calling, bud? You're like, da, 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 right? Or as the rotary, so that's why your finger would twist, right? Right. You got to think about that. But so we go from there, and then we move into this global economy, and business just says emails, right? Like even now, I mean, good. I wish that I could just block some of these spam vendors from sending me mailers at my home, right? So we have the global economy of mail, email, spam phone calls, and sometimes we call them spam, the vendors call it outreach.
Yes.
Right. And it's important to think about that kind of distinction. Does your customer call it spam? Right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's outreach, but this is the norm always. And it's been around since I started selling in the late 90s, right? I was at the end of the punching in all the numbers on a phone. Thank goodness. Then we sped it up with just auto dialers, but same difference. And people used to pick up the phone. Now it's really how do you get to the conversation? And I'm leveraging artificial intelligence and just traditional mediums to try to reach out to people. And it's really to drive that in-person conversation. While we would like to do everything over Zoom, I still like to go and meet people. I get to come out and see you in a few weeks, and I'm looking forward to that conversation and the conversations we're going to have with other people while we're out there, because there's nothing quite as interesting to me or mentally stimulating as getting in a room with a few peers and just talking about industry, talking about business. And then over time, as you feel out what other people are thinking and listening to, and you start to value how they present their opinion, then you start to look at how might I work with this person, or how do I engage with them more and stay relevant in this conversation.
No, listen, I think that's it is very true, you know. But some days I wake up and it's the introvert of me that is like, the extrovert signed me up for lunch today, huh? You know, like, where I'm like, Anthony, 2 weeks ago, I can't believe you did this, right?
Exactly.
Right, like, so we wrestle with that. But like, what I find really, really interesting here is that we have all of these people and technologies, and they're excited about using AI for outreach and connecting. And then you have all of these other people, and maybe even them themselves are like, ooh, I'm just gonna have AI manage my email.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, we get into this world of, you know, people saying, I'm gonna be able to send out all the messages I want. I don't even have to do. And then you get into this world of people saying, I don't read my email anymore. I have an AI agent, or it might not even be a full AI system. It's going to just be an AI that properly configures your mail filters, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
then what are we left with? Like, I think that's why it comes back. It circles back to the human connection, right? And we'll do another topic. We were talking about this yesterday. You and I were, where your outbound email agents are going to have to convince another agent to let you through.
Exactly.
Right. So that's a whole different thing. But when we think about this, like, the value is that we have to find those human connections. And I think that people are starting to more, and will definitely more in the future, look for that handshake, right? So dinners. So that's where we end up with. We end up with local events, local dinners. But we did a bunch of research earlier this year, right? People don't show up for these little mini conferences for the keynote. They don't
No.
show up for the dinner for today we're going to talk about the state of cybersecurity, and all of you who live in this every day are going to learn something from my 15-minute 90% marketing talk track. Like, that's not like,
Yeah,
they're
I don't
showing
think
up for the
anybody.
connection.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to listen. I mean, yes, in occasion, and generally it's a top-notch speaker, but these smaller events, it's let's talk about a subject maybe for a minute and then break out and actually have those individual conversations. It happens in business of where it's vendor approached. It happens whenever you're doing SKO. You have the standard corporate information, but most of the actual information and benefit to the employees comes from the networking and the side conversations that they have at a tabletop or at dinner. And I think as a seller, in my history, I always found it very much more appealing and easy to go and have that second and third conversation once I actually sat down with someone at dinner or in a setting to where we actually had 10 to 15 minutes just to square one another up, like look one another in the eye, give a handshake. I know it's old school, but it's still how business gets done. I mean, you were a person that was an executive at some of the largest banks in the country and in the world. And we talk about agents and we talk about checking email. I can only imagine how many emails you would wake up to on a Monday, and how many were relevant to your role and how much was outreach. Granted, you probably had some great spam filters, but I for sure know that my friends in the Valley that are carrying security roles, they don't answer their email, they don't answer their phone, they don't follow voicemail. And if you can connect with them, you better have a very good statement that's going to catch their attention. And then maybe you get that meeting with them or you refer into it.
Yeah.
But the in-person stuff is where it's done for me.
Yeah.
I was reading that, I always talk a little bit when I speak with customers about their client acquisition costs, the CAC, right? How much is that? And there's different ways to calculate it or what they look at. And it's generally marketing plus sales. and how much revenue you generate, right? That's what your client acquisition cost is per client. And with startup money and with just overall acquisition costs, that could be $7 for $1 return in the long run. And as you see these AI ventures starting to happen, it's even higher because it's an infinite return for the AI organizations. But you think of getting people into that room and speaking to them, it's so much more valuable than, yeah, I'd love to talk to you via email. Like
Yeah.
you actually have something to where people tend to hold their word more, and will engage with you post event as opposed to an email. Yeah, I love to talk. I do it myself. I love to talk, and then I get a meeting invite link. We'll schedule a call after I outreach to you, which is a pet peeve of mine, right? I've said this multiple times to you. So I just think we got to get back to some of that more in person, and we see it in trends. Like our partners that host these events, they're having an immense wave of new business. They have no shortage of demand right now, and you need to put on great events
Well,
to draw.
I think what you said really hits, right. It's not just in person; it's personal events, right? It's sometimes, and most of the time, that's going to be in person. But even then, it gets stale when it's just another steak dinner, right?
Mhm.
And in like the distinction, like if someone's like, oh hey, we're gonna do this dinner, it's gonna be at the Capitol Grill. Okay, like yeah, that's fine, right? Like, and it's so weird to me because I grew up without anything, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, like I'm going to the Capitol Grill, right? Like,
Yes.
I remember the first time I went to Ruth's Chris, and I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh yeah, right? Like Sizzler was a big thing back in the day, right? Like you're like going to Sizzler, get that Red Lobster going, like
Yeah,
those
you
are
get the buffet. Hey, let's roll.
right. And now, having been in the roles, you're like, like it's another steak, right? Like, but what pops out and what actually draws people are those things, those reasons where they wouldn't otherwise, right? And it could be, hey, by the way, we grabbed 15 of these people who you guys actually, we know you all know each other, or similar hobbies or similar interest component, right? Um, there was this new place that opened up. We were able to get a back room. It's like, oh, I've always been wanting to try that place,
Yes.
right? Those types of things will get people together and to connect. And then the I think there's two ways to look at it. One, you got to know who the hell you're talking to when you show up, right?
Yeah.
You got to be ready, but that's really to make sure that you can drive the conversation and you can steer the conversation and get the information and the insight that you need to turn into a successful business transaction, right? So how do you think about that? Like, how do you think about taking an event like a dinner, and then how valuable is it in the sense of, is it just the relationship? Is it the data collection? Is it the
Yeah, I think it's both, and you hit on a couple top notes there, right? Of being prepared going into it. And I've showed up to dinners where I knew only the person that was speaking and one of the clients that attended, and trying to start up conversation with the other groups. And there was relationships in the room with different people about different subjects. And it was very hard to break into those conversations because they already had relationships built. They had predetermined conversations that they were going to have with you as a vendor. And you just don't have a way to break the ice. That's one thing that I think with having the proper intelligence around who's in the room is very important. And the reason for that is it drives better natural conversation. Zig Ziglar always used to say is if you help enough people get what they want, eventually you get what
you get
you
what you
want.
want, yeah.
And I think that goes in hand in conversation, because if you and I both had those conversations, we probably even led a conversation where it's more me focused, and that's zero value to the person that you're speaking with. Whenever you make it more about the other individual and truly seeking out to understand what their interests are, concerns, industry insights, whatever that might be, it tends to go a lot further, because you don't show up to a family event or to your best friend and start laying out like your product portfolio. You ask, hey man, how's it going? How's your kids? What have you been doing since the last time we saw each other? It's natural. And when
Yeah.
we come in with this business focused, it just doesn't land well.
It doesn't. It's so funny though. Like I took my so I've got an 11-year-old and a 2-year-old, right? We took them both to the little playground nearby. 2-year-old is sitting there. She walks up. There's another little girl, right? So she's having fun on the playground. Another little girl walks up. A mom and a little girl, and Ava, she just gets quiet and starts watching, right? Like, what's going on here? Who are these people, right? And the other little girl's kind of the same way. It almost felt like this like cowboy stare down, right? Like kind of thing going on. I go to the mom. I'm like, I wish somebody could like tell these kids that it will never be easier to make friends than when you're a kid, right?
Exactly.
As an adult, it's hard, right? Like, let's be real. Then and the moment you have kids, you're like, are people still around? Can I find somebody with kids in the same age bracket that actually like the things? But when you do these events, you actually have a number of common points, right? But you just can't come in hot, right? Like,
no, you can't.
It's like almost like, hey, how's it going? I'm Bob. Nice to meet you. Okay, so let me tell you about myself, right? It's almost like that Will Ferrell movie where he like drinks coffee for the first guy, right? Like chill out, listen, right? Ask questions, which goes back to having a plan. I think it comes down to having a plan, right? Like, or how much is that? Is just natural for people, or should they rely on it? Is it both?
Well, I think you got to have some inclination of your objectives, right? And is it, when you go to these dinners, yes, you want to come away with revenue, you want to come away with opportunity, but you're not going to walk out with an order. I mean, I think, yeah, if you had a one-on-one meeting with a client and it was a closing meeting and you both understand, like, hey, you're upfront about it, I get it. But when you come into there, I mean, don't set the goal so high that you press and turn it into a sales call. It's, I want opportunity to meet, and actually, I would rather be able to discuss my business the next time we met in a formal setting, to where it's properly aligned. You understand what I'm coming to do, which is actually give you a product pitch, as opposed to, hey, welcome to dinner. Here's everything about Delve Risk. It's more of, welcome to dinner. What do you do in life? How are you thinking about security? What are your interests around that, or your problems you're trying to solve? Not that always used to be, what's your biggest nightmare? Like, my biggest
I hate that question. That's literally the worst. The worst, when a vendor's like, what keeps you up at night? I'm just like,
everything.
You know what? Like, my kids, I don't know, like work, stress, like
yeah. And it used to be the right way a long time ago, it seemed like, but it's more of like, understanding what their top priorities are. Understanding, like, read a little bit about the business. Most of the companies that we target, or you're going after, what our data shows us is the top 700 customers that we have are all publicly traded.
Yeah.
And this is where, just having enough experience to read about the organization, read the 10K, so that you can understand what's their cybersecurity budget, what is their policy, what is their focus this year, what are their business focuses. And if you're going to have that business conversation, relate it back to what the CEO is trying to drive inside the organization, not you trying to drive that product into the organization.
Okay.
And
Okay. Hold on. But you just said some stuff that, like, yes, I agree. People should pull the 10K and do this thing. Most of them aren't going to do that,
yeah,
right?
well,
So
and that's
like,
fair. It's 100% fair. There's a reason why I think I've had multiple successful exits.
I agree,
And
right? Like,
I'm just saying is like what I did as a best practice. I mean, why would I start doing something differently?
well, no, listen. I think it's great, right? And this is one of my favorite parts about these types of conversations, right? Because it's like, well, how do we take something where, like, you have the tenacity to be like, I'm going to read that 10K. I'm going to do this, right? And then you have the other person who's like, dude, that sounds like a lot of work, right? Like,
It
and
does.
you're right, it is a lot of work. So, but the net is be ready,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Be ready, and maybe you don't read the 10K, but you have an account briefing,
Yes. Exactly.
right? Like with
Yeah, well,
stealth.
that's what we've simplified that, and that's why I came here. This is what I've loved about working with you over the years, and it's what I point back to. But this goes back to caring more about the conversation you're trying to have with the person that's sitting across the table with you. If you're not, as a seller, going in prepared to speak with that company, then shame on you, right? And you might be lucky to get a second shot.
Yep.
This is one of the biggest pieces. If you've earned the right once to mess up, and that happened right before you got the first meeting, and after that you can't do that. If you don't show up prepared, it's extremely hard to get a second bite at that apple.
Yeah. No,
So
I think you're right. You're right, and I think it baselines you, right. So besides being a Delve Risk customer and having, comprehensive research packaged up for you, and so you're ready when you do that. Besides that, right there, field marketing enablement. It's so
hey,
odd, right? Like, I bet that's a great idea. Somebody should go make that.
yeah.
Um,
Well, other than that, right? I mean,
what are the five? What are the five questions? Couple of questions that somebody should, have in their back pocket that you would say.
well, I think what are the top priorities for the security organization for the remainder of the year? I think it's like the number one piece. You're the one that taught me this. Is security leaders, they might have this laundry list from the board of all the things that they want to do. They aren't going to get past three because they're not going to have the time, the budget, or the people to move beyond that. And if you can't align to those three, then you probably need to go on and talk to someone else as a seller, right?
Yeah.
Have a great conversation. Number one, that's the number one question that I think a security seller can ask. The second one is, how are things going? Like with work, right? Understanding like it's a high pressure job for every CISO. Dave Tyson came and did a presentation at Risk IQ, and he said, you know what the CISO's role is? It's a shit job. And everything is on the fire. As soon as I walk in, it's what dumpster fire do I focus on? If you understand that that's a constant alert, maybe they don't want to talk about the breach that's in public. Maybe they don't want to talk about the breach that happened a year ago. I mean, it's think of the room that you're walking into and say, hey, man, that was rough. What did you change after that? Right. What were the biggest lessons that you learned that I might be able to share with my network? You need to come somewhat with hat in hand and in a ability to learn from the people you're talking to, and then take that back and figure out if there's a priority that you can align back in.
Yeah.
So top five, I would be, you generally, just like a CISO, you're probably only going to get to three of those if you ask the right questions and you listen and add follow in on that. Beyond that, you're going to start to sound more like a taskmaster or a little bit more salesperson-y. I try to avoid the family conversations for sure initially, right? If someone offers it up, it's great. But I look for other things that are in common of where, if you're in New York, more than likely they're going to like one of the New York teams, whatever season it is. More likely it'll be the Yankees, right? Or the hatred of the Red Sox. I mean, I think that's pretty uniform right there.
I think there's I think people have a goal. Like when you do a dinner or you're doing it in person, right? Your first thing, your goal is to stand out, right? Your goal is for them when they see your email or they see your call, they don't just go, who, whatever, right? And that's what you're really trying to establish in that dinner, right? They're like, oh, Bob, oh, that guy, okay, like, right, whatever that is, right? And I do think that you want to ask some clarifying questions, right? You want to connect there, in definitely in that business sense. But the way I would approach it is I would ask the folks, something like, hey, where's everyone falling down? Like you're sitting over here in your industry, right? In your company, where do you think the industry is falling down related to this, to endpoints? Let's imagine I'm selling endpoints. And what you're going to get is you're going to get them telling you information about themselves and their company, right? Under the guise of like, but you're also going to get information about like maybe the market trends that they're seeing and hearing that you're like, oh, really? I didn't know that. Like, yeah, my buddy, blah, 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 blah. And that's how you find those connections, right? Like, I do think that if you weave in that personal stuff, it will be reciprocated back, right? And that's how you're not gonna be like, so tell me about your kids. How's that? You're like, I got a couple kids. Like I don't know you well enough, right?
Yeah.
but if I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my goodness, we went to the playground. My daughter was stink eyeing another 2-year-old, right? Yeah. And like you're like, my daughter did the same thing when she was her. Like, oh really? Like, what? How old's your kids? Like, blah 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 blah. Dude, I can't believe my 11-year-old feels like she's going on 16. You like that's.
I have an 11-year-old that asked me for a phone last night. It's right. Like, come on.
Right? Like that's the thing of where you get to build the connection, but it has to be organic. You want it to feel organic.
Yeah, most right. And when you're it's a mixture of both, right? Of where, you have selfish interest. Everybody does. Everybody is always going to look out for number one. But you just got to be smart about it, right? And don't force the conversation into an area that you're not comfortable with.
Yeah, my grandfather used to say this to me, whether it's good or bad, right? But I'd be like, I was 5 years old. I remember, he'd say it to me all the time. And he's like, you're number one after me. And I'm like, I was like, okay, right. Okay, so you've gone to dinner, you've done the thing, you went to the event. You did something that you showed up, right? Like I know this one guy, he wears this crazy freaking cowboy hat, right? Like, and I legitimately do not know his name. So if you're listening to this, I'm super sorry, dude. But right, but I know if I saw it, I would do that, right? I'd be like, cool. So what are the best practices after the event? And I would say even I heard a good one recently where a buddy, whenever he meets somebody at a thing and they swap phone numbers, he immediately takes a picture of them two together and sends it from their phones so that 3 months later you're like, oh yeah, like I remember, right? So I think that's a great practice. What are some other best practices Cadence follows up?
There's a couple of where you talk about the business and personal things, right? But you got to reflect back into the conversation of what you had with that individual. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Kansas City. We usually talk about barbecue whenever it's mentioned, anything about Kansas City across anybody in the United States. I have an awesome recipe for cooking pork. And a lot of times I'll follow up with something simple like that from the conversation of like, hey, here's the recipe of how I make a smoked pork butt.
Yeah.
And if you DM me, I'll reach out to you. Maybe I'll give it to you. But it's more of reflecting or referencing the conversation you had with the individual to remind them of the conversation you had, and then also about the business topics. But you need to follow up within 24 hours after that meeting, after that dinner, because beyond that, it starts to go into every other person they've talked to in the last week. And when you're dealing with a busy executive, they might not remember you in a week the same way they did in 24 hours.
Do you think that's always true? What if the thing was on a Thursday?
Yeah, I follow up. It doesn't matter.
On Friday?
Yeah, you got to get it out there because it's just, you can even do a multi-stage follow-up, but hey, just wanted to thank you again for the conversation. You can keep it shorter and sweet. Just want to thank you. I will write a longer piece and try to arrange topics for our next conversation on Monday. This way, you're always dropping the hook in to the conversation. I am a big person that believes you got to use hooks in conversations. So I'm somewhat, it comes naturally after 30 years of selling, but when you have a conversation, and this is something that people always used to get frustrated with me is, oh, you got to explain it out in complete detail so that they fully understand it, is I would rather have one or two questions at the end of our conversation as to drive conversations and follow up for the next time we speak. And that's a little bit more of a practice you got to follow. And that is like, hey, let me get back to you on that topic, or let me give you some more information about the product, or let me give you that recipe, right? I'll write it out for you tomorrow. And then build hooks into every time you outreach to someone in order to drive that conversation forward.
So and I think that's an important piece, right? And it feels mechanical though, right? Like but I do think that what we need to realize is that yes, we're building real relationships. We just happen to have a process for it, right? And you want to continue to build those real relationships, and you want to have a process for it afterwards, right? In business speak, we'd be like, do you have your follow-up cadence workflow defined, right?
Yes.
And like that just sounds dirty. Like after I meet somebody, I'm like, let me enter them into my follow-up cadence workflow, right? And I will I'll send them a note tomorrow. Let me pick out one of the 5 things, and then I'll automatically send them another note in a week. Or like it just feels grimy. But and I think it's important because we're fallible. Like we will forget, even if the relationship or the like, you're like, man, you know what? The guy just probably not going to buy, but I had a really good conversation. So the better thing for long term is to actually make sure you follow up, right? One of the things I personally do with the data and the information, right, is I meet somebody, I have a conversation with them, and then I use a private personal CRM. So log information into that, right? It doesn't go into the actual company CRM, right? But that way I know who they are, right? I don't want to put he's got 3 kids. I don't want to put that in HubSpot or Salesforce, right? Like some rep down the line and call, hey, how are your 3 kids doing, Bob? He's like, what the hell are you doing? Call me, right?
Yeah, crazy.
But how do you think about actioning that information afterwards, right?
Yeah, well, you got to
what do you
take
do with it?
you process it a bit, right? This is probably the way I grew up, in having somewhat of a I have friends that are diligent note takers. I have a very good memory also myself with these conversations, but it generally needs to be written down. And I use that information in order to generally do debriefs afterwards too with my colleagues. If I have an SE that's working with me, or a partner like yourself, it's like, let's sit down and just do a debrief of everyone we've talked to and just figure out, like, what is the outreach? How should we speak with them? Who do they know that might be interesting conversation the next time if we get dinner together? Bring them into the room. It's just, you got to think about it and brainstorm after the fact, because what might happen for me a lot of times is when I talk to an engineer or I talk to my CEO that I was working with, they would have different viewpoints of the conversation. And it's extremely insightful to have that outside opinion of, well, they're actually kind of leaning in on this it's not so much endpoint, it's next generation endpoint, Jason, since we used that as an example earlier. And this is probably where they're looking at it. And yeah, I know so-and-so over there, spoke to him a month ago, and he said they had a project coming in 6 months. So it's probably a good time to go after it. You never can do everything on your own, and it's better to have partners that you can work with in that and do the debriefing with
it. Okay, so we're just about out of time here, but like I think it's important for us to recap here, right? So like, let's talk about it: before, during, after. How would you summarize this conversation? You're talking with somebody who's more of an introvert. They're like, I'm new to the industry. Jason, you've been doing this for a long time. How do I approach this? Pre-event, post. Let's summarize this chat a bit.
Yeah. So pre-event, introvert or not, right? It's uncomfortable for a lot of folks that are introverted to go out and have conversations, but also just, you don't have to talk as much. Have your questions ready, because generally what people will do is they will talk if you ask an open-ended question. That means not a yes/no question. It's driving conversation. I think as a seller, I'm definitely an extrovert. So I like to be prepared for the pre-events, right? I like to understand who's going to be there, understand the businesses, understand what the topic is that we're actually driving people to come and speak to, and be informed upon that. So it's a bit more of that pre-planning, right? In the event summary, it's right. Make sure you go and talk to everyone in the room and figure out who are the key people that you want to try to get a little bit closer to. Either you sit next to them, you figure out different ways that you want to actually drive questions towards them to get them to talk more about, just industry or open up. And then you also might need to ask ancillary questions to other people around the table. You just got to somewhat read the room while it's happening. Take diligent notes. We have tools now. We have AI note takers. You have them that you can put on your phone. There's nothing wrong with pulling out a note card and writing down a little fact or a note. And when I do that, I always ask if they're okay if I write this down, just so that I can remember. And then the post side of it is get your process. I have one that I just kind of apply to. You can definitely formalize that. Make sure you reach out in a timely manner after the event is over. I say 24 hours. Some people will follow up that evening, so it lands in the morning when they're in to work the next day. And whenever you do that, cite the conversation you had, tie it back to the business opportunity that you might think is there and prevalent. And if you did everything the way that we've talked about, where you connected the personal relationship, connected it with the business outcome, more than likely you're on your way to having a different engagement and a different conversation with the individuals that came to your event.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I think, being ready, having your the research done is an important piece. I actually think it's actually maybe even easier for introverts once they mentally get over it, because the problem with extroverts is like they always want to be the center of attention, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't want that to be the case. You don't want that to be the takeaway that your prospect thinks of, right?
Right.
But I think, being well informed, having a game plan, kind of knowing, hey, I'm going to go in and these are the kind of things I'm comfortable talking about, right? And you'll find your people there. So being ready ahead of time, when you're there, I think it's actually being present. Because one of the worst things that can do is, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, hey, this is great. Da, da, da. Hold on. Yeah. No, that's like, yeah, I'm totally. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh. Like if you do that at dinner, I don't even care how important that email is. Like, you might as well not have been there. Right. And because they will remember that. And as a vendor, maybe you go to dinner all the time because you're traveling, but maybe that security leader doesn't, or that prospect doesn't, right? And then post event, I agree. I think it's a follow up. Listen, you've been in sales for a long time. So clearly you would know better. I've as the executive, like I've always felt like the first day almost feels like the dating rules, like, you gotta wait 48 hours, like, like, and I know that there's different sales methodology pieces, right? Um, I think part of it comes down to like whatever it is, um, you have to be methodical about it, right? Like if you're if you're at RSA, sending that follow-up email after you met them the night before at RSA, you're just gonna get lost, I think, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like, so I think it's being be like, okay, they're slammed at RSA, they're slammed at Black Hat. Do I want to be in the batch of vendor emails they get Monday morning? Do I want to be there? You know what I mean?
Right. But we're talking about two different things here, though. Is what I'm talking about is a dinner where you sat down with someone at a conference. Of course, yeah, you're gonna. Hey, I'll follow up with you later
Sequence
next
it a
week
little bit
because
differently.
we
That's
all are
right.
going to be swamped, and 100% agree.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I just think I think it's having a plan, right? And it's a
Yes.
plan that you're going to stick to.
Yes.
That's the thing, right? So okay, cool. So hopefully this was helpful. This is always fun. But I think the big thing is like we see the data, we see vendors that a lot of vendors that are doing 1 to 2 dinners a week or more, right? Like there are some of these vendors that are on the come up in the growth, like they're talking 300, another 200 dinners this year alone.
Hey, you get $100 million in funding, and you got to grow revenue by 10x in 12 months. You got to get a lot of hustle.
You do, right? Now I think it's finding events, IT, cybersecurity, security leaders. We've got a great partner ecosystem, so we're able to help folks with that. We also have a tremendous amount of data and information when it comes to IT and cyber buyers being able to say, hey, who's going to be there? How do you orchestrate that? How do you approach the market, right? And it's really, really fun to kind of bring data, insights, and experience to bear. So thanks for joining. Thanks for always fun chatting. And hopefully this was at least educational for folks listening and watching. So thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.